long as you have access to Moodle, you should be able to mark your attendance if you have been added on to the ERP. So if you are facing any difficulty in marking your attendance on Moodle, get in touch with me by afternoon and I'll try to get it fixed, right? So we'll continue with the session now, okay? And I think we had just begun with understanding touch point and contacts yesterday. So I'll continue my slides from there. Meanwhile, I've fixed the problem of chat also. So I recommend that all of you once try to just type something in the chat section. So we can initiate this. Let me just try it, and I think it is fixed. Yes. So in case you are struggling to mark your presence on Moodle today, you can actually write present sir here, and I'll probably add you to Moodle by afternoon, right? I'll get that fixed. Okay, will that resolve the problem? Right. And I would request everyone to mute your mics until there is a response that I am seeking from you all, right? In case I am seeking a response, right? I have not muted all of you by default. So in case there is a response expected from your end, only then unmute your mics, please. Yeah, right. That's I can still see Aditi, Aditi Bhatt. Aditi Bhatt.
Yes, sir.
Your mic should be muted. Yes, that's better. Okay, so we'll proceed with the sessions that we did yesterday, and let me share my screen with you and proceed. Okay. Okay. I hope the slide is visible on your screen.
Yes, sir.
Right. Good.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Done. So let's begin. So I gave you an introductory session on understanding of what marketing communication is and what integrated marketing communication is all about. Then we also talked about how the whole concept holds relevance in the area of marketing. We also understood not only why marketing is so important in business, but also how marketing communication plays a very integral role in marketing. We also talked about how the focus has shifted from the traditional to the modern approach in the markets, in the process of marketing, and definitely in marketing communications also. And one very important thing before we proceed, we studied was that the levels of communication in an organization vary when we vertically see their coverage. At the macro level, the communication happens at the corporate level, and that's a much broader picture about the organization, its mission, its vision, its goals, its quality policy and customer orientation, and other philosophies. Then at a lower level we have marketing communication, or we call it marketing level communication, which actually is communication related to upstream marketing and the 4 P's that we talked about, or the 7 P's that we talked about. And then further down, there is a marketing communication level communication, which is what we are studying here. And that is actually today termed as integrated marketing communication. This is the level of communication where we are simply targeting at our customers, our prospects, and through different channels and forms of marketing communication. So that's what we had discussed. And then I gave you a brief overview, and then it was time for the session to close. So we talked about the contact points, and we said that contacts play a very important role in giving an opportunity to the customers to come and get aware about the product, to get engaged with it, and then to take a purchase decision, right? So that contact, as we said, can either enhance the whole experience, or it can adversely affect the whole experience. It's generally not neutral. So what were the different areas or the channels or the modes by which you can get in touch with your customers? And most importantly in that, we saw that there is a plethora of different channels, right? From television to radio to internet to newspapers to PR to social media, to direct marketing, to sales promotion, point of sale contacts, word of mouth, and various other out of home media, which we also call as outdoor promotions and stuff like that. So this is what we have discussed, that contacts are not neutral conveyors. They are either promoters or they are detractors. They will either enhance the whole experience and value of your product, or they will undermine the value, and that all depends on how you make that contact and who are the personnel involved in that particular contact. And that's where I gave you the idea of the 7 P's, where people, process, and physical evidence also play a very important role besides the 4 P's. Then contacts, as we said, are not equal. So each and every platform or channel or form of contact will have its different pros and cons. So it is very important to see what is the purpose of communication, to whom you are doing it, and what exactly is the best way to communicate your message. I'll take that in detail in my subsequent slides. There's just an orientation to the whole idea. This is where we closed yesterday. We could not cover it. So there are the types of contact or touch points that we say can be categorized into primarily 4 categories. So all that we discussed in the previous slides can be brought into 4 specific categories. One category is the contacts that the company creates, the touch points that the company creates, and we call them company created touch points. So these are generally definitely well planned, and you can have a greater amount of influence on this from your end, right? So advertising is one form of it, websites, blogs, news releases, advertorials, packages, brochures, store displays. All these are examples of the company created planned messages, right? These are completely in control of the organization. The organization can really control what they wish to communicate to their customers. The other category is the intrinsic touch points. And intrinsic touch points are those messages which are received from the interaction which occurs during the purchase. I gave you an example yesterday about the manuals, the product manuals, the instructions, the websites related to the product. So that website is different from the company website that we're talking about. The packages of the product, and the personnel who are involved in communicating with you at the point of sale, or the customer representatives. These are the touch points which are intrinsic. So they are neither, they definitely have some influence from the company, but then they are intrinsic. They are involved during the purchase decision. The third category is the customer initiated interactions and the touch points which are involved there. So the interactions that are initiated or that occur when a customer tries to contact a company, and those are your helplines, and many a times again customer relations team, and CRM efforts, and websites related to problem resolutions, and email responses to your clients. This is another category. So in digital marketing, you can see all these combining together, but then you also must see them from different aspects. Many a times companies are more focused at company created touch points. I gave you an example yesterday of Reliance JioFiber, that if there is a grievance related to data, the customer does not get an opportunity to speak to the customer care representative. That's a challenge with the IVR. So these kind of efforts show that some aspect of touch point is getting adversely affected here. And the fourth category of this is the unexpected. And as the name suggests, this is very crucial, very critical to an organization. The unexpected touch points, the unanticipated messages that are received beyond the control of the company. And these have to also be managed very well, because they can actually put a dent on the entire customer experience, and can adversely affect the organization. So what are these? And these are, as we said, the word of mouth, most importantly, the buzz that is created in the market, even the news which is not paid, not the editorials, but the actual news about your organization's performance, its corporate governance, its ethics, its news that is spread in the market, the messages from your stakeholders like suppliers, your distributors, your retailers, your analysts, from the analysts, from influencers or influencer marketers and government officials. All these are unexpected touch points. So if we try to broadly categorize them from a strategic perspective, one is from an operational perspective, which channel to be used for what. that's where the previous slide works better. But when you organize them as a complete program, as a complete package, you must also look at these four aspects, whether the company created, the customer initiated, the intrinsic and the unexpected touch points are also being taken care. And that is what is going to bolster, if very beautifully executed, is going to augment or bolster the importance of the product and the service in the eyes of the people. I hope this has been clear so far. Can we
Yes,
proceed?
sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
thank you, thank you.
Yes,
I
sir.
just need a feedback in between so that I am assured of you being connected. Now, this is an important slide for you from, as I said, from a more clear perspective, understanding of the perspective of what does the company try to do and how far is it effective from the customer's point of view. I said the focus shifted from manufacturers to retailers, but we also have to understand in marketing, the focus moves from the seller to the customers. And so in these all these touch points or contacts or the tools or the channels or the forms of marketing communication, we have to see that there are two very important factors that each of them cover. One is called the influence or the control, the level of control or influence that the company has on each of these. And that ability of control and influence varies from each of these touch points. And that's why I said every contact has a different level of effectiveness. On the other hand, another parameter that plays a very important role is the relative impact, that you have a control, you have the ability to control and influence the message, but is it impacting the customers equally? So you can control the influence, but the impact may be beyond your control. I give you an example. If I advertise a product, right, I can design an advertisement to show that I am probably the best company, and my product is probably the best product and much better than my competitors, which companies generally try to do. But to what extent will the customers believe in me is the relative impact. So that belief that the customers would have is the relative impact. How much would they be encouraged in order to take a purchase decision is the relative impact. So we take them on two axes. On one axis, we take the ability to control the influence. On the other, we take the relative impact. And we realize that the four broad categories that we had talked about vary in terms of their performance on these two parameters. So the planned touch points or the company created touch points have a very high ability of control and influence from the company's end, but they have a relatively lower impact on the audience because the audience knows it has been initiated, created, designed, and presented by the company itself. And company definitely will praise its products and its brand rather than otherwise. And then when we talk about the intrinsic form of communication, which happened during the purchase decision, they have still a high, but a relatively lower ability to control than planned or company created messages. But the relative impact, though low, but is still higher than the company created touch points, which means that seeing is believing. When you find the customer experience to be good, when you find the product manuals to be good, when you find a nice packaging to your product, when you find a nice process and physical evidence, you find people behaving with you properly during the purchase decision, you are furthermore inclined in terms of believing in the product, and the relative impact increases. But the company has lesser control because there's a human interface coming and you can't hide much of the stuff yourself. But yes, definitely still in the control of the company. Then moving further, you have the customer initiated touch points, and these now move towards the lower trajectory of the ability to control and influence. You really can't influence or control the way the customers will try to initiate a response. You are not aware what exactly would the challenges be. However, a lot of companies do a lot of initiatives. For example, you must have seen on the websites frequently asked questions or FAQs. FAQs are a fine example of where we are trying to ease off this process. Or you have the chat bots who try to understand using AI your problem and try to fix it then and there, even without requiring a need to speak to the customer care executive, or no question asked returns and these kind of policies. So there are a number of ways by which customer initiated those forms can have a lower control but a very high impact. They say that a dissatisfied customer made satisfied is more influential than a directly satisfied customer, which means that if you were satisfied in the first hand of the purchase of your decision, that's all right. But if for some reason you faced a problem and that problem was beautifully resolved, you become even greater admirer of that organization and company. And that's where the e-commerce companies like Amazon and Flipkart initially did. The Indians, when they came to India, had inhibitions of online purchases. The plastic money was not in place. The digital payments were not to that extent in place. People were skeptic about product returns. When you had an order delivered and it had some issues, the customer problem resolution process was so beautifully initiated that you would many a times not only get a prompt return or refund, but you were also getting the product for free. And companies invested heavily on these kind of efforts to win the confidence of the people here. So these are examples where the companies would have still relatively low control because they're not aware about what really the customers may come up with. But at the same time, the impact is high. I'll give you a very interesting example of this, and this happens more in digital marketing. Many a times when you buy a product, right, we know that there's a term called word of mouth. You're happy with word of mouth, and you spread that. Many a times I've seen even the customers are not very aware about what they want, and that's the reason why they write very negative reviews about a product. Imagine you buy a phone worth maybe less than 10,000 rupees in Indian currency, and then a lot of people writing reviews, the camera is not very effective. Now, many a times you would understand that you really cannot expect that price level to have a processing capability or a camera performance of a level at par with relatively higher cost phones. Or many a times when people buy a lower end product of a particular brand, let's say you buy an economy product of Samsung or any other brand which also makes premium products, and then you write reviews about something which was not really expected from that product, is a mistake from customers too. So you really can't have the ability to control what they feel and say about the product. Yet the influence, the effect of that can be very high. And that's why maybe companies like Apple, and that's why I say that it's not only marketing communication, even marketing has to be thoughtfully planned so that it does not affect the image of the organization. So Apple knows this, and Apple never gave you those features and functionality where the customer really wasn't aware about what exactly did he expect. So they never compromised on the prices, they never compromised on the configurations, though they compromised on features. They did not give you memory cards, assuming that that is the reason why your phone gets slower, and you can't predict the data security on a memory card because you might just buy an XYZ company's memory card in that case, and various other examples like that. So these are examples of customer initiated efforts, but some companies have separate toll-free lines for customer relations, for customer problem addressals, and that's where you can increase the relative impact of that form of communication. And lastly, the unexpected form of communication. The name itself shows you have a very low level of ability to control or influence this form of communication. But at the same time, there is a much, and in fact, the highest level of relative impact. If that unexpected response, that query from the customers or communication from the customers is addressed well, then yes, it has a very high relative impact on your customers. So going back to the previous slide, if you just see, we said that if the PR, if the news, if the about your organization, if the word of mouth, all these are very beautifully done. Obviously, it depends on the 4Ps and other communication practices and promotions. Then yes, it has a much greater influence on your company's image and profitability in the longer run. So that's how a firm has to understand balancing all these forms, and it is important to cover all these. Earlier in the traditional approach, there was a greater emphasis on advertising and other forms, which had a high ability to influence or control, but had a relatively lower impact. And that's why, and in India, it was popular, and that's why direct marketing and personal selling was assumed to be very important, because people believe that word of mouth still plays a very predominant role in affecting customer decisions. And in direct marketing too, the e-word of mouth plays a very important role in marketing communications. Moving ahead, so we understand that touch points are important. They need to be planned. They need to be administered well. So touch point planning as we call it, requires determining the optimal mix of marketing communication tools or channels. You have to understand, you may have deep pockets, you may find all of them relevant, you might go for all of those, but many a times you might have to invest, based on the limitations and based on the effectiveness of each of these tools, you might have to pick up a few. So you have to determine the optimal mix to ensure that you deliver the right message in the right manner to the right customer at the right time. And by now you would have understood how that happens. You might have seen various examples. For example, there were certain brands. If I talk about a Maybach, or if I talk about a Ferrari, or if I talk about the super luxury brands, you would not find their advertisements in newspapers and magazines for that matter. You might find those ads either in in-flight advertisements, in-flight magazines, or maybe an exclusive presentation on certain. These days, it has happened on certain, direct-to-home sort of services, or many a times they have their own separate, digital media presence, and they try very different forms of reaching out to their customers. On the other hand, when we talk about brands which are more day-to-day sort of products. So, for example, again, when I said about magazines, for example, a magazine called HBR might have a different level of advertisements. You might find a Montblanc or a Cartier or a luxury brand there. But on the other hand, when you read an average business magazine, you may not find those ads being present there. So it depends on, what platform, not only the channel, but within that channel, also to what extent, what is the right platform you'll use to communicate the right message to the right target audience that you have, and obviously in the right time. Taking a disciplined agnostic perspective. When I say agnostic, means when you are skeptic, when you are a maverick, when you don't, you are a non-conformist, you just challenge everything. Take it like that. So disciplined agnostic performance with no preconceived notions or rules for one Marcom or marketing communication discipline over the other. Taking that, you have to be calculative. You have to evaluate and take your call about which is the right and the most important, or probably what hierarchy of channels you have to follow. You have to behave on a discipline agnostic perspective. You just can't take a preconceived notion about that I have to give more importance to this platform than the other, and I'll invest accordingly. And based on the outcomes, you will have to tweak them and redefine your next marketing communication mix. Then zero down communication planning. That's what I exactly meant towards the end. Zeroing down would here mean that focusing on the objectives to be achieved, and then based on that objectives, what are the tasks you would require to achieve them, and to achieve those tasks, which is the most appropriate marketing communication element that should be used, and to what extent. And once you do this is a part of planning. Once you execute that, you would evaluate what was the performance, whether the selection of the platform went slightly wrong, or the way you executed it was not perfectly done. And based on that, you would improve your next level strategy next time, your fund allocations the next time, and further go ahead with your marketing communication mix. Levels of integration we had already talked about. We had talked about the logic of integration, the concept of integration, the purpose of integration. But here what we are trying to understand is that integrations can also happen in different forms. Like I give you an example of cross level multi-channel communication. So vertical integration would be a case here where before that, let's understand a campaign. So campaign is a term given to a complete program that has been designed to communicate a certain message to the customers. Now, a campaign can be executed on different platforms. The same campaign can be promoted, or there can be a separate campaign for different platforms, right? So when we talk about vertical integration, here within a specific campaign, right, to a specific audience and a specific market segments, you try to communicate the message, and all IMC or integrated marketing communication elements work synergistically here. So what we are trying to do is we are taking in all the elements within a specific campaign. So that's why we call it a vertical integration. The horizontal integration here means that across various campaigns, right, you go ahead to a specific audience or a specific market. So one campaign to all, or across campaigns to a specific audience. There is a single audience, but you have different campaigns done. And for that, you are aligning across different communications to the audience to maximize the impact. So there could be a cross, which is what we call the multi-channel integration, or there could be a vertical integration. Another very interesting thing is a mix of all these. So you can have campaigns, different campaigns, you can have different audiences, and you could have different channels being used to target them. And that's where IMC, to the most complex of its forms, can exist. So across multiple channels, across audiences, across market segments, and delivering a consistent value proposition or a message and image across all these segments through different platforms, through different multiple campaigns, is what we call as the cross audience integration. So I can have a different strategy. I give you an example of this, not exactly in terms of campaign, but in terms of when companies do that. There's a very interesting term gaining relevance in marketing today. You know that there are two kinds of products we had always been talking about, the mass production, the mass consumption products, and on the other hand, the customized products, right? These are two, ends of the continuum. You have luxury products which could be customized, and you have the mass production customers which are normal for everyone. Then we also came across terms like niche products and stuff like that. But today there's a term getting popularized. People have also started using terms like mass customization, which also happened. But today we are using a term called masstige products, means products being tried to sold to masses, but they are prestigious products. So prestigious products were generally not initially made for masses. They were for the class, not for the mass. But today, masstige is playing importance. When you talk about products like Louis Vuitton, or when you talk about products like Apple, Apple today is not a cheap product in Indian currency when you look at the relative pricing differential and the currency parity. But then still, if you look at the sales from the company individually, it is probably the largest selling phone in the world. And a lot of people buy that, and people buy that across classes. You will have the most professional, the richest, and an average professional also buying it, or a youngster, or somebody who does a fantastic job, or somebody who's just started his first job could be buyers of an Apple phone. So the way Apple has done that cross-audience integration to extend shows that they are trying to reach out to different customers. However, this may not be a perfect case of communication alone, because the impact of the product is much higher. Along with definitely the other piece, but it is more predominant, and so it is a compulsive buying product in the eyes of people. There's a strong brand impact, but yes, they have managed to do that across campaigns, and you find them on the retail stores, you find them on third-party retail stores, you might also find them available online, and you might also find them on e-retails. So they are trying to look at different platforms. They have different form of advertisements, different campaigns for their products. So they are very beautifully integrated just to reach out a large segment of customers. They have their internet presence, they have their offline presence, and that's how they're beautifully integrated. I hope this is making sense to all of you.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes,
So
sir.
now we close down to an understanding of what we studied. Right. So now it boils down to understanding that the two purposes that we discussed were what? They were financial returns. You want to do marketing promotions or marketing communications to get financial returns. And the most important long-term perspective still happens to be a strong brand equity or brand image or brand identity. So brand identity would be what? It is a combination of factors, a lot of factors like the name of the company, its logo, its credo, its punchline, its tagline, its philosophy, its symbols, its design, packaging, product, service, performance, stuff like that, and the image or the associations in the customer's mind. So what image does it? It's like the association test. What is the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of a product? And you would understand this really plays a very important role. I'll give you an example of this, maybe how brands fade out over a period of time. Certainly, it's not alone because of communication. Product still remains to be a very important factor, but still communications also do impact. I gave you an example the other day of how Sony and Nokia, when they were in the market, when Nokia was doing good in the Indian markets, Sony was a forerunner. It had already entered the market very well, though there were brands like Siemens and Motorola who had already forayed into the Indian market, and Motorola. But Sony, in spite of having a very strong system support and developer support, and it had fantastic softwares, the the speed at which the Nokia took over the Indian markets was phenomenal. And I still believe, because I was also a programmer at that point in time, and I realized that the reason was more on not on the product side but on the promotion side. One aspect was that the retailers were very influential in impacting the customers, because the retailers were very beautifully sensitized by Nokia. The second is the mindset of resale value was promoted, and because large number of people were made to buy, which was also because of the lower or cheaper Nokia phones initially compared to Sony in its availability. And then people thought that because it's the largest selling phone, they would get better service, there would be better resale value for those products, and the products were rough and tough. One of the most popular phones of Nokia at that time was 3310, which probably, I believe, was the most ugliest looking phone ever. But people were so fascinated by that phone. Why? Because number one, it was a cheaper phone. It was a durable phone. It is what something people could afford. It did have one or two games like the Snake and other stuff, which added on to the attraction. But to support their psychology and sentiment of owning a particular product, people exaggerated the importance of that phone. And otherwise, the phone really didn't have anything to be, if I don't exaggerate, not much to make it probably the most happening phone of that particular era. So this is also what happens. Why Maruti Suzuki became a huge company in India initially was primarily because of that. That one, it had a low-cost car, and since it was a largest selling car, the assumption of maintenance, was that it's a low-maintenance car. It could be getting after-sales services and repairs easily, and that further endorsed the resale value of the product and the purchase decisions of people. So this does play a very important role. So how do you want to position your product in the eyes of the customers? Whether you want to position it as a value-oriented product, a value for money product, or a luxury product of very high brand value, or you want to promote it as a niche product, or you want to present it at some USP of your product. So value proposition and USP are two very important factors, and the brand identity is created through product, through price, through place, through promotion, and its packaging, and then all these aspects like the name, logo, symbols, and punchline of the company. You have seen how advertising plays the game between when Coca-Cola talks about the official drink and Pepsi talks about nothing official about it, or when brands actually make silent remarks against one another and try to hit them below the belt. So all these gimmicks happen to affect the brand image. So I was trying to give you an example. I already gave you an example of Nokia and Sony on various instances on how the promotion strategy went for a toss. A time when Nokia was doing well, still there were issues, there were battery replacements, but people still had belief in that product. After a long while, when people realized that the company was not still catering to their expectations, not getting into open source, not getting into Android, not getting into touchscreen so easily, once that faith in the company was affected, after that, even if they made fantastic phones later on, the people still were not willing to buy those phones. So that's where the image of the product plays a very important role. If everything is in a positive mindset, anything you do goes in favor, even if the decisions are not very effective. But once that image is affected, no matter how well you take decisions, they would always have a lesser impact in the minds of people. This happens in case of governance also, and this also happens in case of business. So I give you an example. When you talk of Apple, what is the first thing comes to your mind? Give me a word or two that what really comes to your mind when I talk about a brand called Apple.
Status symbol.
Can you be a little louder? I couldn't hear you.
Status symbol.
Okay, what else? The first thing that comes to your mind when
Quality.
you listen to, come again, quality.
Reliability.
Okay.
Reliability. Yes. Sir.
Okay. What else?
Best
Value.
That
Come again?
proudness you feel when you use an Apple phone.
You feel proud. Okay. What else?
best camera feature.
Okay. Best camera.
People tend to think they have achieved something by
Good.
using an Apple
So
phone.
now you're getting, even if I speak to 200 of you, you each one of you would may have a different image about the product, which is because of its value proposition. But certain aspect will be common to most of you, and that's because of the USP. So the first thing, if I see each one of you use terms like quality, pride, barring one or two aspects like reliability, innovation, and stuff, that shows that how effectively Apple, more than its quality or the product or something, has affected a brand image on each one of you. That you want to buy Apple not because you require that feature, but you want an Apple mostly because you think you are no one if you do not own or possess an Apple phone. It doesn't mean that the phone is not good. I'll talk about some strategic aspects, the size of the phone, the features of the phone, and but at the same time, like somebody said, the camera certainly it makes one of the most crisp. It provides one of the most crisp images. But how beautifully it has done that! It still doesn't have the best megapixel camera available. It does not let you zoom in beyond a certain level, so the pixels don't break. And when the pixels don't break, you find that image to be pretty, effective. Though it is crisp, it enhances the color combination, but at the same time the impression of the image goes better. While other companies, they would, if still have the best of the cameras, better of the cameras, they would not restrict that zoom in feature, and the pixels will break and your impression about the product will change. So they have been very sharp about also what to pitch. Imagine you're buying a lakh rupee phone and just for a particular feature called camera, and you know that the camera is also no more than a 12 megapixel. While other companies are giving you 6 cameras on a particular phone, and Apple might give you 3 for the price. So what we are again seeing here, or 2 for that price, what we are seeing here is that they have on one hand not only focused on the quality, but if you look at the price, it is much higher, and for the price, the quality gets compromised. But still, the beautiful impact of branding that they've managed to do, and it's because of their pricing, because of obviously a lot of things. Today, if you want a handy phone, you don't have many options. Besides Apple, you won't find a phone with still a handy 4.5 size screen or a 5.5-inch screen. So they have beautifully captured the market from a small size phone to a larger size phone. When you look at the design, once you hold an Apple phone, your rationality goes for a toss, and the aesthetics are so high that even if you believe in not spending money on Apple, you would crave for buying it. So they've beautifully done that. So what I was trying to show is that's the first image. Now look at another brand. This brand was probably one of the leaders in the market for a long time. Even brands like Samsung were underdogs in front of a brand called LG, right? But that same LG, which was pioneer in so many things, which came with GoldenEye technology even before AI had come in place, they had the best of the CD-ROM drives. They have the best of the television sets and the TV screens and stuff like that. Today, when I look at LG, even if the product, if you've used an LG product, you realize it's pretty good. Even the phones are very good. But the problem is, when you think about what comes to your mind when you think of LG, many of you who are relatively younger wouldn't even have used it ever. Otherwise, people will say it's like lost glory. It is once there was a kind of a company thing, because they were never able to focus on one specific aspect in the minds of the customers. They made fantastic products, but they could not come up with a USP. That's the first thing that comes to my mind when I think of a brand called LG. Sony, when I talk about, you might say it's the largest consumer good manufacturing company, or it has a plethora of white goods, from, though today they don't manufacture laptops anymore, but from mobiles to laptops to white goods to Xbox to so many products they had, or Samsung for that matter was trying to be a white good company. MI is trying to become the largest white goods company or electronics company over a period of time on lines of Samsung. Apple trying to position it as the most innovative company or the most valuable brand over the years. So that's what we are trying to talk here, and we'll take that in greater detail in the next classes when we talk about content marketing, or we talk about the message that you want to travel across. But brand identity plays a very important role. So that brand identity has to be maintained. If that does not exist, you lose your existence. That happens with political parties also. When there is no one thing comes to your mind, even if it is good or bad, you are able, one thing can target a certain audience, certain segment of the market, and things can go in your favor. So IMC plays a major role in the process of developing this brand identity and sustaining this brand identity and developing it into brand equity over a period of time. And that's why it's very important. I think given the time consideration, because you'll have another class, this is the last slide I'll be taking. Remember, I yesterday told you that amongst various examples, I'll take an example of Montblanc. So this happens to be one of the most, respected brands when it comes to the elite products and known for its craftsmanship. Now, here you see that besides the actual communication at marketing communication level, they are also communicating at marketing level. So without IMC also, like they have a website which you could see on your screen, a small, rectangular block that shows a snapshot of the website, which also shows content marketing. They've beautifully written some stuff which you could see later when I post this video. So they talk about their craftsmanship, they talk about their history, they talk about their prestige and stuff like that. So website presence, blogs and stuff like that, newspaper ad, all you see is marketing communication level communication. But what I'm trying to show you is something hidden, something more tacit. And what's that? That they also communicate at a marketing level. Now, when you look at Montblanc, what you're seeing on the left is an ad of Montblanc, which probably exists once or rarely figures out on a national level newspaper. Now, when you look at any other company's ad on in a newspaper, primarily if it's not a luxury brand or cars for that matter, luxury cars, you would find the whole ad cluttered with a lot of information about the product, lot of dealers underneath it, a lot of information, and they try to take the most value out of their ad by putting in so much of stuff. When you see brands like Montblanc appearing on a full page or maybe a half page or a quarter page national newspaper advertisement, what you see is just something like this, maybe a watch or a pen in a spotlight and very limited information, probably, or a small message, and nothing besides. Because they know the kind of customers they are targeting is not just the word rich, but people who are elite, people who would have understanding of the brand, who would know what it means, and would find out themselves the right way of connecting. So it may not even require the website address to be given there. However, they generally have it at the top. So they don't have any contact numbers directly, but they would have a web address, and they know that their customers would be able to find Montblanc on the internet and also try to find out a store, because Montblanc stores are not available, everywhere, probably 300 or 350 stores across the globe. And then the pens and the watches are also not available in any regular shops that are there in the market. So either you will find them at the international airports, at the duty-free shops, or you would find them at gold souks, or you would find them at very elite company-owned retail shops or high-end third-party retail shops. So the placement itself is an example of what it is communicating, the place. The product's price itself shows what it must be. A pen, selling at 30,000 rupees to begin with and going up to, close to 1 lakh rupees, like Cartier, which is again a sister company to Montblanc today, are examples of how pricing works in their favor, and they try to communicate through their price also. The product itself certainly is elite. The craftsmanship, when you buy a pen, or when you look at, the resin finish that it has, or the rhodium and the gold-plated nib that you have, and the nibs are also further customized for different kinds of users, which is another campaign that they have. And the white opal stone carved into a beautiful snow-capped peak design that you find on the tip of Montblanc in their logo are examples of the beautiful craftsmanship that they have. So the product itself speaks volumes about what it is. And finally, promotion. Promotion itself is meant to communicate all this. So these are brands which not only focus only on communication, but they focus on all the 4 Ps, and they have become strong brands by it. But why promotion becomes important is it further endorses the other Ps and shows what a brand is, and tries to bring to the limelight the real value of the product. So that's what makes a big brand. And then they have their philosophies. Now, when I buy a phone or an Apple phone, I after a while start getting so intrigued into it that how did the logo come from? Where did the logo come from? An average customer of Samsung wouldn't like to know why Samsung logo looks like this or why do they write Samsung in this particular font style. But when you look at Apple, you remember a lot of people were looking on the internet to find why there's a bitten apple here, or where did this apple come? Why Apple signifies it, the name Apple was kept for the brand. You get so much into the philosophy of the product. So similarly, when you look at Montblanc, this beautiful design, petal leaf design or a flower shaped design is a snow-capped peak design of a mountain in Europe called Mont Blanc. And since that mountain has a height of 4,810 meters, you find that value also beautifully engraved on the nib of the pen that they use. And they take it as a pride of Europe, and they take this brand as a pride of Europe. And then they have a complete philosophy again built around it. Then they make pens to commemorate them to great writers and great legendary people. And that's what you see on the top right of your screen. At Montblanc, we believe that everyone can leave a mark. They want it for people, but then they have special edition pens in name of Gandhi, in name of Kennedy, in name of writers, Kafka, and various others. So that's how a brand really caters to the elite. When you talk of brands like Breitling, now they were making watches for pilots. You don't have to have a watch that pilots wear for various reasons, but then there are people who would be crazy about buying those watches again. So this is when a company can sell a much higher value product to a certain segment of customers only when they're able to build that brand identity. So we'll talk about all these together on how economy brands, elite brands, masstige brands are created using communication. But yes, communication plays a very important role in endorsing the brand image, brand identity, brand equity over a longer period of time, and can result in profitability for the companies. You could be profitable at high volumes, you could be profitable at low volume and high margins, and you could also have a mix of the two strategies. And communication plays a very important role in endorsing. I hope you've been able to understand this.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. So we'll proceed
Yes,
with
sir.
this in the next class, because I think it's time due for the next lecture. And I'll post this video online so that you could refer to it, and we'll proceed further in the next session afterwards, right? So have a nice day and see you all. Mark your attendance on Moodle. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
You're welcome. God bless
Thank
you.
you, sir.
God bless you. God bless you.
Thank you, sir.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
sir.
Thank you,
You're
sir.
welcome. Have a wonderful day.